Hey, it's Nay, and welcome back to Nay's Little Garden and Home. Y'all grab your little drink and a little snack. I'm already tired and it's not even lunchtime. We're here to talk about today the garden. I'm not gonna bring you out into the garden today, but the garden tours and visits are coming soon. So let's skip jump right into it. I have planted out about 50 or so plants, maybe a little over 50 plants. Y'all, on the past, I wanna say 4 days, it's been a lot. I still don't have my sweet potatoes out. We are past our last frost date, about a week past that. And it's still, we're more than a week past, a little bit more than a week past our last frost date. And I still feel like the nights are a little too crisp for certain things. So today I planted out about 15 plants. 2 days ago I planted out about 40 something plants. So I have a lot of my tomatoes, my peppers. I just planted out, like today was mostly peppers I planted out. I planted out my honey nut squashes and butternut squashes, butter bush squashes. I haven't planted out, now that I'm thinking about it, and I'm gonna go plant that out today, is my loofah and my acorn squash. I'm basically trying to get all my squash out, and I still haven't even watered in all of them. It is like mildly, like it's got clouds up in the sky, so I'm like, is it going to rain? I've been last time I planted out, it said it was gonna rain. It kind of like drizzled, because I was like, oh perfect, I'll plant and then the rain will really settle things in. It's not the end of the world. I do have some flowers on the tomatoes and peppers that I planted out a week and a half ago. I plucked off some of the the flowers off of my pepper plants and kind of left my tomatoes alone. Everything is starting to look like it's coming together. My biggest thing right now is just the sheer amount of soil that I have been having to purchase. So I purchased a good amount of soil before, and I did a lot of filling. So what ended up happening was I waited forever for my raised bed from Birdies. It was something I purchased and it was like a pre-sale thing. So I got it for a really good price. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I did set it up. It is definitely thicker than the ones you get from Amazon. It also, I feel like, is a little more true to what square footage they're claiming, because I feel like the ones I've been getting from Amazon, they'll definitely work, but they'll say it's 6x3 or 5x4, 5x3, but it's a little off. So you can't, like when you use the square foot, I have this plastic square thing, and you put that in there, it doesn't quite fit, and it should, because that's what they're claiming, right? I feel like when they're doing those numbers, they're including the little bit of space for the actual, I don't know, the walls or whatever, and that just makes the soil not the correct width. Putting together the Birdies bed was just as easy as the Amazon bed, but it is definitely much more sturdy. It's extremely sturdy. I don't have those beds filled still. So I have one Amazon bed and then one Birdies bed, and I'm supposed to put an arch trellis in there. The Amazon one is about 2/3 full for this year. I don't ever fill up completely a raised bed in the first year. It's not necessary. It's about 2/3 full. I planted one plant in there because I just kind of moved some of the soil. Soil is so expensive. So my favorite soil for the price and how good it is the Coast of Maine soil. It is about $20 for one bag. And a 5x3, 5x4 raised bed is gonna take about 7 or 8 of those bags and not fill it up. No, I'm being dramatic. It takes about 6 or 7 of those bags. And it's like, it doesn't like go all the way to the top, but that's, like I said, it's not necessary. Oh, the other thing I wanna say about the Birdies raised bed is it's a little taller than I feel like the average Amazon raised bed, which I do think is going to be good in the long run. So what I do when I set up my raised bed, my husband goes and levels out the ground because our backyard is not level. And so he goes in somewhat, for the most part, levels it out. And then we put cardboard boxes that is not like have weird dyes and stuff on it and lay that out on there. Then I wet that cardboard and then I toss the soil on it. So here's what I do. I typically either do wood chips at the bottom, or I do this a little bit of a cheaper soil, not a little bit, a reasonable amount cheaper at the bottom. And then I will top it with the birdies. When it comes to the piece of wood and trees and sticks and branches and them things like that, we just haven't been aligned that well. When my husband will cut up stuff, he has to cut it up into small pieces for me to be able to pick it up and put it in there. But I also have to get it going, right? We are now definitely full steam in grow season. And so maybe next year when I add 1 or 2 more raised beds, I'm really not intending to add too much more to my growing next year, because I think I'm reaching that point of I'm gonna get too overwhelmed. So when I did my garden last year, I tried to think about where I was gonna put things, and I tried to stay true to that, and things kind of got out of place, and I planted tomatoes where tomatoes don't need to be, planted peppers too far for me to be able to reach them to the tomatoes. I planted things a little too close for the arch trellis, trying to capitalize on it because I only had one, because I used 2 cattle panels, so my arch trellis is deeper, versus this year I'm gonna only use 1 cattle panel for the new one. So now I've not quite doubled the amount of cattle panel space, but I've added to it, right? And something to keep in mind with the cattle panel, that they say it is a really good trellis and it gets so beautiful. However, it can only handle so much, because the leaves of a lot of things get big, and you don't realize this when you grow your plants, because they start out little. They start out small. Even just now, I had to keep reminding myself as I was planting out plants, this looks like I have mad space and I should plant more. I don't need to do such. Women and smaller people who want to garden, I hear a lot of like, oh, the 6x4 is the best raised bed in terms of being able to reach and the length of it and da-da-da. I am a small being. The 6x4 raised beds are low-key a pinch aggravating. Reaching into I also have a mild fear of spiders and wasps and those things, okay? Bumblebees and I are cool. I could be out and about with a bumblebee and have no problem. Flies don't bother me. The little gnat thingies don't bother me. Spiders and to an excessive, like a lot of ants and wasps really do irk me in type of like a fearful way. So reaching far, so now and ticks. I have honestly an insane fear of ticks. And so I don't like to reach far in bush to reach for produce. And so a good amount of my produce ended up going to waste. A good amount to me. I still harvested a lot of produce last year, but like I had cherry tomatoes that would fall off, and I was like, those gotta stay on the floor. And now I'm seeing sprouts popping up of what appears to me to be tomatoes. I'm gonna let them rock for now. I might dig them up later. Because what's really cool about something like a tomato or a pepper, as long as you're gentle, the roots being disturbed is not like the end of the world, and they'll probably come back. I planted, so let's see if I can. So this is the arch trellis, right? So you have the arch trellis, and then you have the end of the raised bed. So the arch trellis is one side of the raised bed, the other side, and you have another end of the raised bed, and then the other side. I planted tomatoes, another row, because it's a 6x4, and then I planted another row. So I planted about 3 rows within those, right? Guys, the middle row shot. I think the 5x3, 5x4 is the best for shorter and smaller wingspan people. Okay? Because when you go to reach for stuff, it's so hard, and it's not like you're just reaching for it and things just easy come off all the time. Sometimes you have to tug. I've broken a couple plants last year trying to tug too, just trying to be quick with it. And the branch came off, and now I'm heated. Or I plucked off fruit that wasn't ripe yet on accident, just trying to move fast. So I do think the smaller ones work better, for sure. Planting out the Epic Gardening wooden raised bed. So I got 2 of them. They're like 2 foot by 3 foot. It's like 2.5 by 3.2 feet. Like the way they did the measurements was interesting, for sure. I think that they wanted to just make sure that you got the 2 foot by 3 foot within the raised bed, and you definitely have that. So I got 2 of them, so I was able to stack it. That girly pop is high. I have, I think, 1 tomato plant in there, a few peppers, and an herb. That tomato plant, the higher your raised bed, the harder it is going to be to harvest things like tomatoes later on in the season, because the tomatoes oftentimes will keep growing. So I don't remember what tomato I planted in there. I started getting very overwhelmed a couple of days ago because, like I said, I planted out like 40 something plants. And so I have to figure out how I will be able to, like, maybe I just start determinants and indeterminates on separate days and they get separate shelves, so that when I go to pull them out, they just all are together. Because I started getting real confused. What was this again? Oh no, was this indeterminate? And then at one point I was like, forget it, and started just planting things out. I was mindful though, because peppers don't grow as forever long tall as tomato plants, so I can say I'm pretty proud about that. About that wooden raised bed, I am probably gonna just sprinkle a couple seeds for flowers, if not today, this coming weekend, so that I just have flowers. I have my, I'm gonna open up these milk jugs. I don't really think I had as much success with milk jugs this year as I did last year. Now, I say all of that, and most of of my milk jugs has at least one thing. But the amount of milk jugs that only have 1 or 2 things is a little too high for my liking versus multiple. Because I was dashing seeds up in there, and none of my tomato plants seeds have popped up yet. I'm going to let that rock and see if that ends up popping up later on, and that being my fall potential harvest, because I will, in fact, do that and have no problem with it. But, like, that's where I'm with the milk jugs. I'm probably going to continue to always do milk jugs because there is some success to it. I planted out my green stalk, 1 of them. Guys, I have 4 green stalks. It is a very overwhelming situation, the 3 weeks of you trying to plant out things, when you have, and the thing is, I have a small garden, like, compared to like farmers. I live on a 1/4 acre, which means I am gardening on less than a 1/4 acre. And I'm not capitalizing on all of that square footage within that less than 1/8 of an acre. And it still gets to be a lot for one individual. So this is why I try to take things slow. And what's probably going to end up happening is 2 green stalks might not make it this year. I think my best course of action with these green stalks is perennials. Lavenders. So mint came back in one of my green stalks, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I rubbed my fingers. I was like, what is this? Smelt it. It's mint. It's like either a strawberry mint. It's a flavored mint. It smells amazing, and I hope it bushes out and all of that. Like that. Mint, lavender. What else will come back here? Maybe some sage, maybe thyme. Those things, I need those type of things to be planted in about 2 of my 4 green stalks. Like, just pick herbs, and even herbs that don't necessarily, oregano, like, that might not just come back. Fill up a green stalk with just herbs. I did plant I think an oregano in that wooden raised bed, and I feel like, oh, I could have just planted it in a green stalk. Now I do have another oregano plant, and I have a couple basil plants I need to go out, and a couple sage plants. So those will go into my green stalks. It's just a lot. So we did manage. Remember I told you I was gonna move, I want my green stalks off my deck. My husband moved one of them to the side, and I'm loving it already. I planted out about almost a half of that green stalk. So I put tomatoes, I put a bunch of tomatoes. I put some herbs, I put my lavender plant, I put in there. I put a few things, and I just kept planting out my arrows peppers. So all of the smaller, my dwarf tomato plants and my much smaller pepper plants, I planted out a lot of those. And then I tried to, when I faced it, because the sun goes up and goes back around there, I tried to put the side that has more plants than the other ones facing that directly. At some point, there is a high chance I'll turn it, but for now, it is what it is. I want to see how growing does in that green stalk on that side, because if it ends up working pretty well in my favor, I will definitely have my husband move those to the side of the house, and then that will be a whole second garden in which we will have to add a second hose for me to just water those plants. Because right now what I'm doing is taking 2 little jug thingies and filling it up twice. So I let that run off and then come back again from inside my house with it and pour it in there, and that will get very aggravating very quick in, say, like July and August, when the summer really is kicking, and I have to do that maybe twice a day versus just getting a hose, putting it on the top on a lower setting, and just letting it continue spit out water for about 15 minutes. I did that with the plants in the polytunnel. Matter of fact, let me just bring you out to the polytunnel real quick. Nothing looks insanely amazing, but I am impressed how it is looking so far. And my husband didn't know what I was doing, but I basically turned it on to the lighter setting and leave per raised bed for about 3 or 4 minutes of just, and I will move it twice. So it gets about 8 to 10 minutes each raised bed, about 2 or 3 times now. I've done that already, and I feel as if the plants are loving that versus when I would just water it. Because I heard people talk about watering deep, and I never really grasped exactly what watering deep would look like for someone who does not have an in-ground like a sprinkling system or whatever that a lot of people seem to have invested in. I'm not there yet. At some point I would like to invest in that, but I'm just not there yet. So I have to water from my hose, and then the stuff that's farther back, I have to fill up the hose, the jug with the hose, and then walk over and water from there. There's definitely something different to that. Now, I'm not as concerned about the plants on the outside because we are getting rain on and off. So for now, I'm letting that rock. My onions are definitely bulbing. I think my garlic, knock on wood, it's looking fabulous. Something I did that I did on purpose was I have a mix of soft neck and hard neck, and I want to see how they come out. I am a little concerned with just sticking with one over the other, because I believe one stores better and the other one's flavor is stronger. I'm not sure. I have to really look into that, but I want to see which one does better. I think the raised bed I have the garlic in this is now the second year growing in there. The garlic is doing so well. I feel like, and I did put a tomato and a eggplant in there, and they did grow. I might take 2 green stalks, right? Because there's 30 pockets each, and there's about 50 garlic in that raised bed. I might mess around and use my green stalks just for the garlic, because I've heard people say that like they grow onion and garlic in their green stalks, and so each pocket would hold 1. So if I take 2 green stalks and they have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, because I had a 3 tier. So if I made if I took the 2 4 tier of my purple green stalks and made that just garlic, that's basically the same amount of garlic. And then I'm leaving a raised bed to actually grow other produce in. That's something I'm gonna have to think about. Because the thing about onion and garlic is that they don't take up the entire summer to grow, but they take up a good chunk of it, that any warm weather crops for me in zone 6 will not live to its fullest potential if I harvest like maybe a determinate tomatoes, right? And the smaller peppers maybe would work in my favor in there. But if I'm harvesting in the beginning of July, my garlic and my onions, let's just say, right? I'm not exactly sure when, but let's just say in the beginning of July, that only gives me July, August, and September to grow. And in September, we're already starting to get a little bit less to hours in the day of sun. And in, let's say 75 days, it sounds like a lot. Like you're like, girl, that's still a lot of time. I would have to start those plants in the beginning of June to plant out in the beginning of July, and I'll probably get one strong flush before it starts getting a little too cold for peppers and tomatoes, maybe. And obviously that's just like playing with games and stuff like that, but I'm obviously gonna try that now with my storage, some of my storage tomatoes. Some of them will, in fact, because I had a 100% germination from all those storage tomatoes I started, which is only 2 varieties from the same brand, but you get, no, 3 varieties, 2 from the same brand and 1 from another brand. They've all sprouted. And so they're only like this big, and they're gonna for sure be a fall tomato harvest. And I planned it like that on purpose because the idea is if I wanted to store, let's say for the holidays, I wanted to be able to have fresh tomatoes, I needed to harvest them as late as possible, right? So if they're saying, okay, 3 to 8 months, they're saying the longest time is 8 to 9 months. I'm gonna cut that in half and say 3 to 4, even let's say 3 to 5 months. I want that to store, and I want to go through all of the holidays. I would need to be harvesting those in, say, September, right? So then you have October, November, December. So we're getting through the big holidays, and things might start looking a little crazy because I don't have the most ideal conditions, but then you'll still have some, right? January, February. So we're really only having March, April, May to not have any fresh tomatoes, because if you start your tomatoes early, I already have flowers sprouting. We'll see how early that brings me actual tomatoes, but I do feel like mid-June, I might be able to be plucking off, because I think that's what happened last year. Cherry tomatoes grow fast, and I could pluck off some cherry tomatoes and have fresh cherry tomatoes. And I'm saying all of this while keeping in mind that I could most definitely in February or in January start a couple very determinate micro dwarf tomatoes to be harvesting 2 months later. You get what I'm saying? Like you could close that gap. So at least tomatoes and maybe even peppers, like the fresh bites, are growing on your windowsill, so you can grow it and it stays very compact and be plucking fresh produce from. While keeping in mind, depending on how many tomatoes I use and how many tomatoes I can save, I might just be able to take those fresh tomatoes and toss them in the freezer in a freezer bag. So these are all things that I'm trying to keep in mind. Oh my gosh, my lettuce is booming. The lettuce looks great. Let me get you in the green stuff. In the polytunnel real quick. I have to pull out all those weeds, but you see, so we have peppers. Most of this is tomatoes and 1 pepper plant, and she has already some peppers growing on her, and I made that executive decision so I can get a couple peppers early, and there's more flowers coming. And then over here we have strawberries already growing. I don't even know if you'll be able to see this. So you see those strawberries growing, so that's really cool. I have a lot more tomatoes I have to plant out, guys. These are all still in the things I started them in, but here are 2 tomatoes and a pepper plant planted in here with some oregano, which is very nice. And then in here I planted up what I think is going to be a little bit smaller of pepper plants. So we have a cayenne and arrows. The arrows are the much smaller peppers. And this one I lost the tag, so we'll see what she is. It's probably a spicy pepper. And then this is just tomatoes in this thing over here. So we have, this is my Bonnie Best. I'm so excited. My Isis Candy, my mushroom basket. And this has grown. These have grown since I planted them. This was some of the earliest I planted out. And so I planted them out so early, most of the things in here, because it's protected. So, and then here's a couple more, you knocked over, things I gotta plant out. This is a Dad Sunset. and then a Cream of the Crop Sparky XSL. The XSL Sparkies, all the Cream of the Crops popped up from seeds so well, and then went ahead and grew pretty dang well as well. So that's all I wanted to show you. We'll do a garden tour soon enough, but don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. I hope I see you in my next one. Bye bye.